Star Citizen 4.8 is live, the wipe came with it, and we've got another round of VR changes to talk about. If you saw my 4.7 report, you know how we're getting big changes fast. Every patch since 4.5, CIG's been putting actual work into VR, and 4.8 is no different. It's been fun to watch because this side of the game is moving faster than just about anything else in Star Citizen right now, which if you've been around for a while, you know is saying something. VR is clearly a priority for CIG in 2026, especially since they want Squadron 42 to have excellent VR support. If you're new here, this series is where I go through what's changed for Star Citizen VR every patch. We'll talk about what got better, what's still an issue, and what's coming down the pipeline. Subscribe so you catch the next one. The big change in 4.8 is something that we've needed since day one. CIG is pulling the UI off your screen and putting it back into the world. The UI has been the worst part of the VR experience in this game since they enabled the VR feature. While getting VR to work, they needed to utilize the menus and readouts that were built for a flat monitor and render them in the headset, and it never really worked as a VR implementation. Stuff that looks fine on a screen falls apart the second you see it in a true 3D environment. On a monitor, your UI is a flat layer sitting on top of everything. Health, MFDs, inventory, all of it in one plane, and your eyes don't think twice about it. But a headset works a little bit differently. It feeds each eye a slightly different image so your brain builds depth out of it. And that's just like how you view and perceive the real world. The best way I can describe it is you take a flat menu and drop it into that, your brain has nowhere to really put it, and it feels off. There's no depth, so it just hangs there in a spot that your eyes can't really lock into easily. You get text you have to squint at, menus that feel like they're floating weirdly, so the interface keeps reminding you that there's a big chunk of plastic strapped to your face. And for me, that instantly breaks immersion. So when CIG moves these elements into real 3D space, they're going after the thing that's been holding VR back the most in my user experience at least. Having said that, I'm not complaining because the UI team was busy with the much needed rework of the game's inventory system. It's something that we've needed in Star Citizen for 5 years or more, ever since they introduced location-based inventory. There are bugs with the new inventory system, but I assume that's more for the tech side to figure out at this point, and hopefully the UI feature team can be moving on to VR now. In the last patch, 4.7, they split the UI resolution off from the game world, so text got a little sharper, which helps with the lower resolution headsets, I think. In 4.8, they pushed it a little farther with interaction prompts, the markers that pop up when you can open a door, call an elevator, hit a terminal. Well, now they're showing up where the door actually is instead of slapped flat across your view. It seems minor, but compared to what it was before, it's a huge change with the prompts being a physical part of the game world. If you were designing UI from the start, this is the approach you'd have taken at keeping everything in 3D. Location markers got a major overhaul in 4.8.1, and thank God for that. Now we have the ability to move their position and scale. It's not on by default, but I recommend using it with the ability command UI_markers.enabled_3D. That means that vehicle entrance markers, object markers, POI markers, even jump point markers are now rendered with depth in the world. The biggest issue that the old setting had would be that I could never run directly at my ship without the ship's name text overpowering the entire view, blocking me from seeing a large portion of the ship. Additionally, when I tried to line up my ship for Quantum, I'd have to close one of my eyes to do it because I don't think it was rendered correctly for the VR implementation in the past. There's a whole bunch of commands you can use to customize them in the patch notes to help this in now, so you might want to check that out and try it yourself. Now, as much as I love VR in Star Citizen, there's one part of this game that I'd never touch with a VR headset, and that's FPS combat. Ground combat in VR has been miserable, and 4.8 is the first patch that really tries to address this problem. The thing that made it unplayable was the weapon optics and sight profiles. If you've ever shot a real firearm with a red dot or a hollow sight, you know the dot has to line up perfectly with your eye or it's useless and you can't see it. Move your head a fraction and the dot slides off target or disappears altogether. That's physics, and I guess a good sim should respect that, but maybe that's where Star Citizen is too good at simulating it. If it was an even playing field, that would work, but it's not. When you play on a monitor, the second you aim down sights, your character is locked into the red dot perspective, and you can just fire immediately. Even when you move or sway the weapons, your head stays locked with the sights automatically. But in VR, the system accounts for head movement and absolute head positioning, meaning you're often not lined up with the sights, and keeping your head in the perfect location was a real challenge, especially as your character sways and moves. You'd raise the weapon, try to settle the dot, and end up guessing where your rounds were actually going in a game that needs you to shoot quickly and accurately. After firing, the recoil would move your head and the weapon wouldn't track with it. We joke about AI in Star Citizen, and they range from never making it out of the spawning closet to being absolutely freaking lethal player killers with perfect aim. Add in the new AI hunting behaviors where they would swarm and overwhelm you, and it only took a few times trying it in VR to get so frustrated I stopped doing it altogether. It got to the point where I'd drop out of VR into theater mode every time I had to do anything combat-wise on foot, or if I was going to play a heavy FPS session, I might not even boot up the VR headset at all, and that's a real bummer because I love the VR experience, even with the warts it still has. The first thing 4.8 does to combat this is the disabling of procedural head recoil. On a monitor, the camera kicks up a bit when you fire, so the gun feels like it has some punch. All games do that, and it looks great on a screen. But in VR, your head is the camera, and having the view jerk upward every time you squeeze the trigger is a recipe for nausea. Turning it off is a welcome relief. I might be wrong, but I think combat should feel like the weapons in your hands, not like somebody's flicking the back of your head every time you fire. The second major change for FPS combat is the re-enabling of the FPS crosshair, which seems to be missing in this footage, and I got it from the hotfix branch with 4.8.1 last night. It wasn't working for me there, and strangely the command was disabled too, but I had it in 4.8, I just didn't get any footage of it. The red dot and sight issues, well, they still exist, and zoom doesn't work in VR either, so scopes don't really work as intended. But what I did test makes aiming better, and I don't feel like I'm in much of a disadvantage in combat anymore, but patience is still going to be needed here. A handful of smaller fixes round out the patch. There's a shadow fix for split eye rendering, which is the technical way of describing those moments where the shadows didn't quite match between your left and right eye. If you've ever felt what I can only describe as low-level wrongness in your eyes, like your eyes were pulling against each other, that's what got fixed. There's a fix for the bright light artifacts that would flash when you got shot. And the one I'm really pleased about, your resolution settings now stick when you flip between VR and theater mode and non-VR. Used to be you'd swap modes and have to reset everything up again, and it was consistently adjusting the resolution during testing, recording. It sucked. It's the kind of fix that tells you that Sylvan CIG is actually playing the game and got sick of the same nonsense the rest of us deal with. I love to see it. Looking ahead, Sylvan CIG has been busy replying to threads on Spectrum and giving us hints on what's coming next. In the near term, like the upcoming 4.8.2 patch or the next one after that, we'll be getting the fix for salvage UI and the remote turrets like the Reclaimer and the Argo Moth. The work's already been done and submitted, it just depends on when it makes it into the next live build. And if this hits Evo Cody with the next one, I will be testing that specifically. For FPS, he talked about fixing red dot issues that I described earlier too. There's no ETA on that, but we can hope it comes soon. Sylvan's been straight with the community that some of this needs more than engine side work to fix, and we should be patient. Longer term, we're looking at motion controls coming into Star Citizen, but there's no ETA quite yet. Foveated rendering and quad views are hopefully coming in 2026. That was the target that Sylvan gave earlier, and he did say it's the plan after he gets everything else where he wants it. Fingers crossed it's sooner rather than later. If you're on a Pimax headset with eye tracking, foveated rendering changes everything for performance because the headset only renders in full resolution where your eyes are pointed, and it dials back everywhere else. Your GPU stops burning frames on details that you can never see. The hardware's already been ready and waiting, we're just needing the game to integrate it. And Squadron 42 is still locked in for full VR support. Chris said back in February they want to do the best VR in any game. Yeah, I know, Chris says a lot of things. But if even part of that Squadron 42 engine work flows back into the persistent universe, VR players are the ones who come out ahead. I just did a review between 3 headsets where I tested performance in Star Citizen VR, and I did it without a ton of tuning on the settings to keep things relatively equal. That gives you the absolute floor that you can expect from a headset. There's an amazing write-up on Spectrum by CS Bow, and I'm probably saying that wrong. It goes into extensive detail about how to tune your VR to get the most out of it. I highly recommend that post for anyone that's been trying to maximize your Star Citizen VR experience. I'll be using it as the basis for my testing going forward, and the link is in the description. Now, a quick word from the video sponsor, Pimax. If you've been thinking about jumping into VR for this game, now's a great time with Pimax mid-year sale through July 10th. There's free global shipping site-wide. All Crystal Super purchases get a free DMAS audio upgrade included, and in addition to the discounted bundles they're offering, there's a VR upgrade program where you can get $80 off if you had a previous VR headset and switched to Pimax. You keep the old one, they're just rewarding you for your business. Everything stacks with my code Katarn as well. I know many people are on the fence about Pimax for whatever reason, and I'm going to make it easier for you. If you purchase a headset and use my code Katarn at checkout, I will pass on any issues that you might have to my contacts to get you escalated support. Simply join my Discord and message me with your order number. I wouldn't offer that unless I was confident that they're going to support you. Thanks to Pimax for sponsoring. We're watching CIG close one of the last real gaps between Star Citizen, the game you watch on a monitor, and Star Citizen, the place you step into. Every design decision has led us here. The scale, the weight of the world, all of it lands so well in a headset. We're not all the way across yet, but we're closer than we've ever been. And the day CIG finishes the job, this becomes the first game that truly simulates everything about the universe they've built. We're one step closer to the Matrix, and honestly, looking at the state of the world lately, I'd plug in without thinking twice. I'll see you in the verse.